Okay, we will go ahead and get started. I'm going to actually take roll call, but I'm actually going to wait and hold the video for the end just because I need to monitor this and I don't know if I can do that and get the video all set up. And so it'll be easier if I wait until the end. So I just want to let you guys know that. Okay, welcome to our August DDRS advisory that we were moved from July. Just we had quite a few folks that were out on vacation, so moved this to from July to August. So welcome. Hope everyone's doing okay and staying safe. I know there was quite a bit of storms up north, especially. So hope everyone's doing okay. I'm going to move us right along here. We always like to start off, as you guys know, all people are empowered to live, love, work, learn, play, and pursue their dreams. Have our new logo, I guess not really maybe newish anymore, but just want to share this as always. Excited to have, especially the Bureau of Better Aging join DDARS and like to just continue to share our new logos with you guys. We have a pretty packed agenda today. We will have Teresa Colazar, Bureau of Rehabilitation Services Director, give us some updates. And then we have Holly and Kelly, most likely, Mitchell and Kathy, presenting many updates on the Bureau of Disability Services. And then if parking lot at the end, if there's any questions really that we don't get to, or there's something that you want to bring up that maybe isn't applicable to any of these topics, please just keep that on a note and we will get to that at the end. I'm going to go ahead real quick and take roll of the members. Let me pull up my list here so I don't forget. Okay, we have, let's see, Kelly Mitchell, I know is here. Saw her. Talee, do we have Talee Clark? Here, no. Do we have Lexi yet? I know Lexi was having some internet issues up north, so she might not, she had to go somewhere, but I think she had some at her house, so she might be joining in a little bit. Kim Dotson?
I am here.
I can. And Michael, I'm worried I'm gonna say your name wrong. Can you pronounce it for me from IDR?
It is Dalrymple.
Dalrymple. Okay.
Yeah,
And
and
Michael, this is your first meeting, so welcome.
It is.
I don't know if you do you mind introducing yourself to everyone?
I don't at all. Michael Dalrymple, and I am the legal director at IDR, and I know a few folks on here already. So hello to everyone that I do know, and looking forward to being a part of this and getting to know some new people as well.
Great. Well, thank you. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks.
We have Derek Nord.
Morning, everyone.
Hi, Derek. Ann Titus. Jim Wiltz.
I'm here. Thanks.
Hey, Jim. And I believe we have Brandy representing NR for Katie Stafford Cunningham.
Good morning.
Morning, Brandy. And Kate Barrow, I believe I just promoted her, so hopefully.
I'm here, thank you.
No worries. We have Nicole Hicks.
I'm here.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi.
Carrie Lee.
I'm here.
And Kim Hahn. Oh, Kim's in the waiting room. Hold on. I just saw her. So I'll give her a second. And Jory, I know Jory there might have been some issues. So I don't know, Jory, if you're able to hear me, but she is on.
Yes.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I don't know why the camera's not coming through.
Oh, no worries. No worries. I'll
Okay.
try to work on that when we're going through.
Okay.
And Kim, I think I just promoted. So I know it sounds funny that I'm saying promoted. I don't know if that's the right word, but I'm not really promoting you. I'm just letting you into the room, but I believe you're here.
Hi, good morning.
Morning. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
Just got in here at the last minute. Sorry about that.
No worries. No problem at all. Okay, I think I've got everyone. If not, and you're not able to speak, like I said, I will go through this as we're getting started and make sure that everyone that is a member is able to turn on their cameras and speak. Thank you all. Okay, moving right along here. Turning it over to Teresa. Teresa, I'm going to go ahead and be your Vanna, okay? As best I can, I guess.
I would love that.
With my 500 screens here.
Yep.
All right. Well, while Jessica's pulling
Okay.
that up, just good morning, everyone. For those who maybe are newer to the group, I'm Teresa Colazar. Um, the Bureau of Rehabilitation Services is one of the four bureaus in the Division of Disability Aging Rehabilitative Services. I am really happy to be serving as the director of that unit and to be here today to share just a few updates with you. So let's go to the next slide. Okay. If you attended the quarterly financial review that FSSA, Family Social Services Administration, held just last week, you saw some of this, but this is like the culmination of all of the VR vocational rehabilitation information from that. So for those of you who weren't able to attend, you'll be up to speed here. Again, really happy to share that the number of individuals, and maybe I should back up because I do feel like there's some new people here. I'm going to talk a lot about vocational rehabilitation, or VR, again, a program within this division. The primary, really sole purpose of vocational rehabilitation is to provide necessary services that assist individuals with all types of disabilities to achieve employment. And that certainly includes folks with intellectual developmental disabilities, but also folks who experience other kinds of impairments. So we have a very clear black and white outcome for the participants in the program, and that is to achieve competitive integrated employment. So certainly we track the number of individuals that are achieving that goal to see if we are making progress, making improvements over time. And we are. So we had a pretty significant increase in employment outcomes last year, and then another significant increase in the number of individuals achieving employment and exiting the VR system with employment this year. So about 37% increase this year compared to last year. 2,874 individuals successfully exited. For us, an exit is successful if they exit with employment in 2026, compared to 2,091 in state fiscal year 25. Of everyone who comes into VR, is eligible, enters into a service plan, and actually receives one or more services, we see about half of those individuals exit with employment and half exit without employment for a whole host of other reasons. And that is also a little bit of an improvement from the prior year. Again, for those who maybe are newer to the group, we did have a wait list a couple years ago. We actually had a wait list for about a 7-year period because we just didn't have enough capacity and resources to serve everyone who was eligible. And when that occurs, our federal law requires that we prioritize services to those with the most significant disabilities first, and then others would go on a waiting list. We were able to successfully close out that waiting list in October of 2024, coming up on 2 years ago. So for almost 2 years now, that waiting list has not existed, or remained at zero. We also did a lot of hard work this year, and I know some of our stakeholders felt this as well as our staff. But we made a lot of shifts in how we determine what services are necessary for a vocational outcome, doing a better job using comparable benefits, really trying to move people through and not have people stuck in certain steps of the process, but really move people through more intentionally to looking for, finding, retaining employment. And through those efforts, we were really able to achieve a much more sustainable cost level, which has really allowed us to, again, keep that wait list down to zero. One of the things that we didn't love that we felt we had to do was to really scale back on some outreach, because, again, we did the hard work. We were able to get to a more sustainable spend level. We are now able to start scaling back up with that outreach. So we do anticipate that we'll see an increase in applicants this coming year. For a while, that applicant count was really taken off and climbing much faster than we had the capacity to handle. That slowed down and that was intentional in state fiscal year 26. And now we feel we can pace our, very strategically and well paced, again, start to do that outreach and see that applicant count maybe more sustainably or gradually go back up. These pie charts are also from the quarterly financial review. This is just simply very high level breakdown of who we served, what an active, this is an active caseload snapshot. This is not representative of everybody that was in VR in state fiscal year 26, because again, every day new people come in and current individuals exit the program. That's how this program works. But in looking at an active caseload snapshot at the end of the state fiscal year, 80% of the participants were those with the most significant disability. 18% were in that second significant group, those with a significant disability. And then the remaining 2% were eligible, but their disability and impediment didn't rise to that significant or most significant level. And then we also have a breakdown here of very broad primary disability category. We capture at least a primary disability as well as a secondary disability, if applicable. Often people have a third or fourth or so on impairment that they experience as well. But when just looking at those, the primary impairment, the disability that impacts them the most significantly in terms of achieving employment, the largest group are those with intellectual developmental disabilities. That's 37%, so over a third of the VR population. The next largest in terms of primary impairment at 29% are those with mental health diagnosis, mental health disabilities. 19% of VR participants are those with physical disabilities as their primary impairment. And then the remaining are those with sensory impairments. So 8% of folks who are blind or have significant visual impairments that are not able to be corrected. And then 7% those who are deaf or have significant hearing loss that again causes an impediment to employment. Now, again, most of those folks also have a secondary disability. So some of these folks in each of these categories experience these other broad categories as a secondary or third or so on disability. Okay, next slide. I mentioned this, I believe, the last time I updated a few months back, that we have made some, I think, enhancements, but certainly a modification in how we provide benefits planning, work incentive planning for individuals in the VR system. And the purpose here, if you're on this group, you've probably heard someone that had some concerns or lack of information or lack of good information about how to navigate employment earnings while they're receiving public assistance, right? Whether that is Social Security benefits, Medicaid, food stamps, housing, whatever type of public assistance the individual may receive. It is complicated and it is complex, and you kind of got to know what you're in for so you can use the many different work incentives that are available that are designed to help people maximize their earnings. So we've been doing this through what's been called a benefits information network for 20 years or so, where we've worked with providers around the state to train one or sometimes a couple of their team members to become a certified benefits counselor. That's not a national certification. That's something we created in Indiana in partnership with the Center on Community Living and Careers at IU. And that worked well for some time. There were a lot of benefits to the way that was being delivered, most notably that benefits planning, work incentive planning service could be more integrated with the same provider that was doing the employment services. That was a real benefit. But over time, as the provider staffing capacity became more and more of a challenge, we started to see more and more providers not be in a position to offer the service. With so many different messengers of the service, you all know how that goes. It gets difficult to be consistent in talking about the objective and providing benefits counseling in a way that really promotes maximizing earnings, really utilizing those work incentives instead of providing benefits counseling as more of a let's do everything to keep your benefits, keep your earnings low. There's different appropriate types of counseling for different individuals. We just want to see more individuals at least be presented with how they might maximize their earnings and still get, for instance, the medical coverage that they need to meet their specific disability related needs. So all that said, we held some listening sessions last summer and got a lot of really good feedback. We used that to conduct a request for proposal, which we were required to do. Our contract with CCLC ended last June, and because of state procurement changes, we were not able to just renew that contract. We needed to do an open competitive bidding process. So we took that opportunity to redesign the services a bit, to hopefully introduce some needs that we weren't able to provide before and better provide these services, again, designed to help people maximize the money they're able to earn without jeopardizing important critical benefits or medical care that they need. So the service remains available for those VR participants who are navigating employment and also receive some kind of public assistance. The services assist individuals to make informed choices, truly informed choices about employment, income, asset building, and financial stability. We again hope that we'll see some increased focus on helping people access different paths to maximize their employment earnings. There are so many different work incentives that are designed for just that sometimes people choose not to go down those paths because of fear, or maybe there's been a bad experience, or they just haven't gotten good information about that. The idea here is to get people the right information at the right time. Again, while there's a lot of positives to the way the services have been carried out for the last couple of decades, another area of improvement is that oftentimes that benefits planning happened kind of a one and done type of process. We enhanced that a little bit over the years, but still people were getting a lot of information early in the process instead of getting information at the time they needed it. So when they start getting a paycheck, oh my gosh, I remember my benefits counselor told me something about, this work incentive, but now it's a year later and I don't remember it. So I'm not going to mess with it. So we've been able to tackle that with the way we've designed the new system, and I'll show you how it's designed. This new process just started July 1st, just last month. And again, it replaced the prior benefits information network structure. The CCLC did win the bid. However, again, their role is very different than it was in the past. Their role in the past was really training those provider benefit counselors, providing some pretty intensive technical assistance and quality assurance over their work. So really, we were touching every person's benefits plan twice. Maybe not the most efficient that we could be. So if we go ahead and go to the next slide. So CCLC is now doing the direct benefits planning services. They are statewide, sort of centralized unit that is directly providing the benefits planning services. So we have a smaller, very dedicated team now providing this information to individuals instead of, again, 100, 125 different liaisons all around the state who maybe do this part-time as well as doing other things. We now have that very dedicated, high quality focused team. Many of them have a national certification through Social Security Administration to provide these services. So the services are provided, again, that right information at the right time. There's sort of 3 different phases, if you will, of the service based on where that participant is in their job search or their contemplation of employment. The initial phase, we call it Service 1 for simplicity's sake, is called information and referral. And this is typically going to be someone who's recently applied to VR, they're eligible, and they're just not sure what's possible. They've maybe heard some things, some correct, some not correct, and they're just not sure what's possible, or they just maybe don't have good information about how much they can work. Oftentimes we'll hear people say, well, I get SSI, so I can only work 20 hours. That's not actually a rule. That's a made up assumption. So let me tell you that today. So this initial service is to really help them see what is possible. It's just a basic introduction, maybe busting a few myths, and giving them basic information. And they are typically getting this in more of a group setting. There are some in-person options around the state. There are some virtual options around the state. And very soon, as of next month, there'll also be some online self-paced modules if people prefer to do that route. So lots of different options for people to get this initial information. The next service is really the bread and butter. This is the individualized benefits planning, a tailored benefits report to each individual's situation. So this is done one-on-one. It could be virtual, or if someone would prefer, or it would be better for that person to have this in person, that is also an option. This is similar to how we've been doing things in the past, but now it's just one of a few different phases of the service. So the idea here is now someone is actively pursuing employment, applying for jobs. They know what they're aiming for in terms of like a minimum acceptable wage, how many hours of work they're able, they can work. We're also encouraging people to think about not what do you want to work, but what can you, how much can you work? How much can you contribute? And this is going to design a plan for them to help them identify exactly what work incentives make the most sense for them. And exactly, what their benefits, what's going to happen, what that's going to look like when they do start earning that paycheck. And then perhaps what I'm most excited about is the third phase. And this is brand new. We have not been able to do this systemically previously. And that is that third phase, which is that follow through benefits planning piece. So the CCLC team is going to reconnect with VR participants once they begin working and continue to connect with them for that first 90 days of employment. Because a benefits plan is only good if you actually implement it. So the idea here is to be able to take that benefits plan that was developed and help them implement it, help them gather the information that's necessary to actually activate those work incentives, to importantly make sure the participant knows the steps involved in submitting their wages to Social Security, because they don't want to get into a spot where they're not submitting those wages. That causes all sorts of issues. It's not a hard process. People just need a good system, a reminder system. It's just like paying it. It's just kind of like paying a bill. It's just something that you've got to get in your life and in your schedule, and do that every month. If you want to learn more, there is a link here where it says Intro to BFP, that's Benefits Financial Planning. We did hold a stakeholder webinar. CCLC led that webinar back at the end of June, right before we kicked off this new process. So if you would like, you can watch that. It's about an hour. And then CCLC will also soon be launching a website with more information. Now, while that website is being done with VR dollars and it's designed to provide information for VR participants, it will be a public website. So anyone could access that information. Okay, before I move on, are there
Teresa,
other
there was
questions?
a question
Yep.
that Kate, but I think it's not. I think we're gonna go ahead and
Oh,
ask
yep.
it now. Can you see it?
Yes.
I'll read
So
it out loud just for those who aren't on who aren't participating, who are not a panelist. It was, as part of outreach efforts, will the VR BFP services have a presentation for stakeholders to learn more about this opportunity?
Yeah, so we did that. You can see that presentation. We did record it. And then again, there is a website coming soon. And if we go to the next slide to piggyback off of that, because that is a good segue. So while the services I just described, they're a VR service, so they're only available to VR participants. A lot of people need this service, whether or not they're currently in the VR program. So I want to make sure, because I never want to assume people know about this tremendous resource we have in Indiana. You should know about it if you don't. The Work Incentive Planning and Assistance, or WIPA. It's fun to say, WIPA program 2. This is a program funded by the Social Security Administration. This has been in place for a long time. Indiana is really fortunate to have 2 different WIPA programs. The northern and central Indiana part of the state is served through Aspire. And then the southern part of the state is served through SERS. So if someone, again, is not currently a VR participant, but they need some help navigating employment and benefits, the WIPA is a great resource. In fact, when we're delivering the benefit financial planning phase, that third phase of services to VR participants, one of our goals is to truly facilitate a warm handoff to those VR participants to the WIPA, so that that extended, follow-up support is available as people, as things shift and move and change for individuals. What we really want to accomplish here is to make people feel confident in their decisions to work and how much they want to work, to feel like there are pathways to maximize their earnings, and to stay working, to not get scared, to not turn down raises, to not turn down more shifts, simply because they're worried that it will be a bad idea for their benefits. Somebody can talk them through and help them understand exactly what would happen so that they can make the right choice. Okay, next slide. All right, moving on. I have just a couple more topics to share with you, but thank you for letting me talk through the benefits planning, because it's new, we're excited, and I never miss an opportunity to talk about the opportunity for people to maximize their earnings and navigate their benefits and earnings appropriately. Okay, so I wanted to also give you an update on our Supported Employment Plus project. And again, for the benefit of those newer to the group, what the heck is Supported Employment Plus, or SE Plus? We applied for and received a discretionary grant back in fall of 2022, about a $14 million grant, all federally funded, a 5-year grant. And the focus is to implement a model demonstration project to effectively help individuals with disabilities transition from sub-minimum wage settings, those sheltered workshop settings, to competitive integrated employment settings. Also, those who were just thinking about maybe sub-minimum wage settings as an option, helping to redirect them to competitive integrated employment options. So the first year was a planning year. So we really kicked off the model demonstration component, if you will, in October of 2023. So what is that? Almost 3 years ago. 3 years ago. We're almost 3 years ago. So in that time, we've had 326 individuals enrolled in the project across. Now we have 6 provider pilot sites. We started with 4. We added a 5th one maybe 2 years ago, and we just now added a 6th one for the final year. So those 326 are really all across 5 pilot sites. Of those 326, 65 are youth, came in as youth, so age 24. Typically, they're going to be 18 to 24. We haven't seen a lot of folks younger than 18 come in, and then the rest, 261, are adults. So far, 123 of those 326 have obtained employment. Some of the others have exited. They've decided to move in a different direction, or they're still actively looking for employment. So we don't know the total success rate of employment just yet. We'll know that in about a year and probably a little longer than that, because we'll continue to track these folks even after the model demonstration ends. But of those 123 who've obtained employment so far, 81 of them started in a sub-minimum wage setting. 29 of them were thinking about it, contemplating maybe going into a sub-minimum wage setting. 13 were at risk. That's an extended category of eligibility that our federal partner added later in the project. So we tend to interpret that at risk pretty broadly, inclusive of individuals who are not thinking about sub-minimum wage specifically, but are thinking about maybe spending a bulk of their time in other segregated settings, or just generally choosing not to pursue competitive integrated employment. So we would consider those to be that at-risk population that we want to, again, help them to see what might be possible in terms of competitive integrated employment. So 13 at risk. Of that 123 who obtained employment, 99 are adults and 24 were youth when they came into the program. We are one of now 13. I think there were 14 states originally awarded, but one of them discontinued. So I believe there's 13 states still remaining that have this particular Disability Innovation Fund grant. Indiana represents 25% of the total outcomes across those 13 states. And the other states, there are states like New York and Texas and Ohio. I mean, there's big states involved in the project. And we're doing really well. Again, we represent, those 123 people represent 25% of the national outcomes for this particular project. If you want to learn more about Support Employment Plus, we do have a project website, which I've linked here on the slide. Any questions before we move forward?
Teresa, I'm going to put the links in the chat.
Yep.
And then I will also put them in the notes. Just FYI.
Yep.
I mean, if you Google too, I was just sitting here. You can Google it, and I think it comes up almost the first link. So.
Yep. And I see there's a question. Lexi's asking what is considered youth. So that we use the federal, or the VR kind of federal definition of youth, and that would be up through age 22. And they need to be working age. So we aren't, we're not seeing 5-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds. I mean, generally this is going to be 14 through 2022 would be the federal, for Indiana would be the federal definition of youth. Actually, that's wrong. Let me back that up. That's the student definition. 14 to 22 is a student, so someone in school. A youth is a little broader. Youth actually goes up through age 24. I stand corrected. Youth goes up to age 24. All right. Just a couple additional updates before I wrap it up here. I believe I mentioned the last time that we were working on a state plan. We're required to submit a new state plan essentially every 2 years. It's a new plan, and then we do a 2-year modification. But essentially every 2 years, we're either doing a new plan or modifying the plan, and that's a federal timeline. So the state plan modification was due this past spring. We did get that approved recently. That is, there's a VR designated section of the state plan, but it is part of a statewide workforce plan in each state. So the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act state plan, again, we complete that in conjunction with those other WIOA partners, namely the Department of Workforce Development. And again, the entire plan was approved. If you're interested in more on that, I can share more at a later time. You can also find that online, and I can pull a link, but it does a number of things. It checks the box so that we can receive our funding, but importantly, it also establishes goals and strategies for the next 2 years. It reports out on progress of the goals and the strategies from the prior 2 years. It provides information on our staffing capacity, our annual funding available. If we were to be operating with wait lists, the state plan is the vehicle to get the federal approval for that. Again, we are not, but the state plan serves a lot of really, really important purposes. Support Employment Plus, which I just shared with you, is just entered its final implementation year. So we're going to try to really hit it hard this year to get those folks who've maybe been in the project but not hit employment yet, really try to get creative problem solving going and help more people achieve employment. We will be
Teresa,
enrolling.
can you mention, sorry if you did this, did you say when the last sort of folks are going to be for SE Plus are going to be, I don't, on board, it's not the right word, but
Yep.
you might
Yep.
have said this. I think it's helpful just with timing.
No, I was just actually getting ready to say
sorry.
we will still continue to enroll people for a short time. But it doesn't really make sense to enroll people if they can't access the package of SE Plus services. So we probably will not enroll folks beyond December. That already only gives them about 6 months. Now we'll continue to serve them in VR after this project ends. So they won't just get closed. They won't just be out of luck. Everyone who is in Support Employment Plus is eligible for VR. So we'll transition them to regular VR services. At that point in time, use regular VR dollars. With Support Employment Plus, there are a couple of extra services, really just one now, because we covered our bases with the follow-through benefits counseling with those changes I mentioned. But the one service in Support Employment Plus that is kind of an above and beyond traditional VR service is peer specialist services. So all that said, 95% of the services that they're getting through SE Plus, they can get through VR once SE Plus ends. And then I wanted to mention something else we've been working really, that we've been really focused on. And again, a lot of providers, any providers or provider partners on the call know this, is a reset of, and I should have spelled that out, I apologize, pre-employment transition services, or pre-ETS. We have a 15% federal earmark requirement. What that means is of the federal dollars that we are allocated through a formula grant, 15% of those must be earmarked, set aside, spent on and only on pre-employment transition services to students with disabilities. Now, again, students are those up through age 22 and still in school. So they have to also still be in school to be considered a student. This is a fairly small set of services that we are allowed to provide with those pre-ETS set aside dollars. And it's really aimed at career exploration, exploring post-secondary options, instruction and self-advocacy, helping students to seamlessly transition, right? That's been the goal for decades, helping students with disabilities to seamlessly transition to what happens post or after they leave high school. So a seamless transition to a training program that's appropriate and that's aligned with the goal, the vocational goal they have, and that they have the right accommodations and all of those things in place. Seamlessly transitioning into employment that, again, is an appropriate fit for their interests and their skills and what's available to them in their local community, all of those things, and that they've maybe built some of the soft skills and the independent living skills. They know how to ask for accommodations on the job as well as in school. That's really the goal of pre-employment transition services. Now, since pre-ETS has been implemented 10 or so years ago, 11 years ago, most of the focus and most of the federal monitoring around pre-ETS has been really, are you meeting your 15% requirement? Are you serving a lot of students and are you spending the money you're required to spend? And there hasn't been much focus on what kind of outcomes or what should be the outcome of pre-employment transition services. So that's been missing. So we made some headway there. This past year, we really were thoughtful about how can we give some better guidance to our pre-ETS providers on, what is the objective? What should we be thinking about when determining what activities are appropriate to provide to students through pre-ETS? It shouldn't just be filling time. It shouldn't just be easing the schools. I get it, schools are strapped, but this was never designed to take the place of what schools should be providing in terms of transition. And I see your hand, Michael. I'll give you in just like 20 seconds. And so what we were seeing is some really, really good stuff happening through pre-employment transition services, some awesome stuff. In fact, we featured a lot of that in our annual reports over the last several years, but also saw some things that we weren't really quite sure what the intention of the service was. It seemed to be sort of like filling time again, maybe doing something that really the school is charged with doing. It was supplanting. So we've been rolling out a series of strategies to kind of reset. We've got to spend the money on pre-ETS. Let's make it as effective as we can, right? Let's make it about more than just meeting that federal spend requirement. So we've rolled out that the purpose of every pre-ETS activity should be to help get us closer to identifying a vocational goal for that student. That should be the purpose. So we've asked our providers, as those career coaches are thinking about how to spend that time, how to utilize those authorized pre-ETS hours of service, that those services should be intentional. They should help drive toward that identification of a vocational outcome. They should sequence very well, because for some of those students, they will come into VR after they leave school or before they leave school. And we shouldn't have to repeat that career exploration, because we should have done that effectively as part of pre-employment transition services. To help this, we've implemented a career profile tool. Looks pretty similar to a career profile tool we already use in VR. So hopefully a VR counselor can pick up that pre-ETS career profile and again, seamlessly move into that next step and not duplicate some of those career exploration activities. We're also working on a system consolidation. We've had a separate IT system just for pre-ETS, and we have to collect data that is required, but we've been able to evolve some of our other systems to absorb those functions and sunset a system. So that gives us some dollars that were spent on administrative activities that we can repurpose and bring into services. We also were able to increase the amount of pre-ETS available to our service providers for this fall semester. So let me go to Michael's question.
Yeah, just real quick, you might have answered this, but if you did, I missed it. Are students in post-secondary programs available for the pre-ETS dollars?
Yes, students and
They are,
post-secondary students up through age 22 are an eligible student who can receive pre-employment transition services.
Okay, great.
Yes, great question. Okay. I don't know, Jessica, do I have something else, or is that
Yep,
may be
I
it for me?
That's it.
Okay.
I
Oops.
think that's it.
I don't think there were any questions either, Teresa. I
Great.
didn't see any.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks, Teresa. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Kelly Mitchell to get us started on some needs updates.
Jessica, thank you. Good morning, everyone. And Teresa, before I dive in here, I was looking feverishly for applause hands, reaction hands when you announced the successes in your supported employment plus, and the fact that Indiana is 25% of the outcomes of that project nationwide. So I just didn't want that to go unnoticed, and applaud you and your team and our provider partners for the focus on the competitive integrated employment success. I am getting ready to turn over the majority of today's discussion to Holly Wemsett. She's going to touch upon some key areas in the Bureau of Disability Services. And before she did that, I had asked to just take the opportunity to provide a bit of a level set. I'm not going to go into great detail because Holly and her team are the experts. They are in the weeds every day. But as you know, the Bureau of Disability Services is responsible for home and community-based waiver services through the traumatic brain injury waiver, the health and wellness waiver, the family support waiver, and the community integration and habilitation waiver. And they are also responsible for supervised group living or group home residential placement for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. There's been a lot of attention lately on an initiative that was rolled out earlier this calendar year around the required annual level of care assessments for individuals who are participating in the home and community-based waiver program. Obviously, we receive email inquiries. We have conversations with our advocate partners. We watch and interact with social media and the news media. And it became clear to me that we have some misinformation out there, if you will. And there's also some confusion and some conflation, if you will, some mixing of various initiatives and matters. So that was the reason I wanted to address the group first. I'd like to talk first about Medicaid eligibility, and that would be financial eligibility for Medicaid services. That is not under the operational authority of this division nor the Bureau of Disability Services. The Division of Family Resources administers Medicaid financial eligibility determination and redeterminations. A Medicaid waiver is not necessarily required for Medicaid financial eligibility. However, Medicaid financial eligibility is required for an individual to participate in the home and community-based waiver program. Therefore, it is not unusual that team members from BEADS in this division that are case management entities, case managers, and our partners in the area agencies on aging as the Aging and Disability Resource Centers will support individuals in processing and navigating Medicaid financial eligibility issues. So there is an initial eligibility determination and an annual redetermination required. You've heard a lot lately about mailers and needing to return mailers. That relates to Medicaid financial eligibility. And then there is financial information that must be provided as part of the process. Individuals that are supported through BEADS on the waiver must have Medicaid eligibility based on disability, Medicaid disability. You've heard a lot of reference lately about HIP, the Healthy Indiana Plan. HIP is not compatible with Medicaid waiver. So you are hearing things about work requirements. Those work requirements are specific to the Healthy Indiana Plan, the HIP plan, and a subset even of that population. So what is referred to as an expansion population. When a person has Medicaid financial eligibility, they do have access to certain services that we often refer to as state plan. Things like skilled nursing, home health aid, pharmaceutical benefits, clinical benefits, early periodic screening, diagnosis, and treatment, EPSDT services. Those are, again, not administered by this division nor the Bureau. The Office of Medicaid Policy and Planning oversees those state plan benefits and approved services. So let's next talk about Medicaid waiver. There's been a lot of interest in and issues elevated around determination for eligibility for Medicaid waiver. Medicaid waiver requires that a person be assessed not only initially, but annually, and be determined to meet functional eligibility requirements that state that this person has a functional need for an institutional level of care. So when we say waiver, it really is a waiver of those kind of institutional requirements. But the individual, by federal guidelines, not state, must be functionally eligible and deemed to need and meet an institutional level of care. So in the spring or late winter, the Bureau launched a new assessment tool as part of the annual redetermination process for functional eligibility. Functional eligibility didn't change, and an annual requirement is not new either, and Holly will speak to all of that. What I have found is there is some confusion because the Bureau now oversees waivers that base eligibility on two different levels, if you will, of institutional need. So one is a nursing facility level of care, and that level of care is required for sometimes the TBI and the health and wellness waiver. And it's also required for the pathways waiver, just to add. But within the Bureau of Disability Services, health and wellness, and sometimes the TBI waiver recipients. The assessment tool for the nursing facility level of care has not changed. In fact, the inter-I assessment for nursing facility level of care has been used, and Holly will probably school me. I know it's been 10 plus years. So the inter-I assessment is not new to Indiana. It is not a new assessment tool for the nursing facility level of care. What did change in 2025 was that the vendor, the party conducting those interviews, those level of care assessments, changed to Maximus, but it was only for the assessments in home and community-based waivers. Maximus had been conducting those assessments for traditional nursing facility placement for some time. So let's talk about the other level of care. The community integration and habilitation and family support waivers require that an individual be found functionally eligible under an IID assessment. That means that they meet the requirement for an ICF, an intermediate care facility institutional placement. What changed there was the tool that is used in the interview process. Again, not the overall eligibility process, but the tool. The vendor did not change. Those assessments are conducted in person, and they are conducted initially by our Bureau of Disability Services service coordinators, and they have historically done that, and by the ongoing case management entity. And they have historically done those redeterminations on an annual basis and were required to do that. For the majority of our individuals that are 18 plus and found to be IID eligible, most of those, even without a waiver, would continue to be Medicaid eligible, meaning they would likely sustain and maintain access to Medicaid state plan services. And Holly will talk more about that later as well. Finally, there has been one other piece that I have noticed as being kind of rolled into conversations around level of care assessment and Medicaid eligibility. Once a person is financially eligible for Medicaid and they have a Medicaid waiver slot, and or really, each of those comes with a service plan. So if an individual is receiving Medicaid state plan, they have a service plan and authorizations. Sometimes you hear prior authorization for services to be rendered through Medicaid. And under Medicaid waiver, they have a person-centered plan, a PCISP, and a notice of action that defines and authorizes their plan of services and budgets. Those are also reviewed on a regular basis. And at times, those services are changed. Sometimes they are decreased, the authorization is decreased, and sometimes it is increased. A decrease or a denial of a particular service is not a denial of waiver. It is not a termination from waiver, and it is not a termination from Medicaid itself. That relates only to the specific service or level of service authorized. So I hope that helped a little bit. We're going to try to put more of this information in a pictorial, but I don't want to speak anymore because Holly, I know you have lots to cover today, and I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Thanks, Kelly. All right, thank you. Appreciate all that information. So as Kelly mentioned, we've got quite a few things to cover today. Going to talk about case management, provide some updates on the ICF-IID level of care and the inter-I, talk about the youth waiver and waiver reset, the waiver amendments that were recently, very recently, approved and implemented, and then touch on our waiver capacity. So feel free to put, as you have them, put questions in the chat, but we'll go ahead and get started. So I think everyone knows, I hope here, that as of August 1st, we have 5 case management organizations providing case management services across the 4 BEADS waivers. That's the Family Support Waiver, CIH Waiver, Health and Wellness, and TBI Waiver. Those entities are Aging and In-Home Services of Northeastern Indiana, IPMG, Inspire, Case Management Unity of Indiana, and then the Columbus organization. We're very fortunate that all 5 of these entities have been providing case management in Indiana prior to August 1st. They all provide case management statewide, and they all provide case management for all 4 waivers. We're pleased to welcome them in as partners as we kind of turn the page August 1st to some new expectations or additional expectations for case management moving forward. Next slide, please. So as you all know, we have been in selective case management on the FS and CIH for a number of years, and it's no easy task to move to selective contracting, even aside from walking through and meeting all the requirements for our federal partners. There's a lot of warm handoffs and work with individuals and families. So we hosted a lot of in-person and virtual meet and greets leading up to this implementation to ensure that those we support and their families had an opportunity to meet each one of those awarded CMOs and talk with them. We had just slightly over 600 individuals that joined either the virtual or the in-person meet and greet. So we were really pleased to see that many people engaged. 91% of individuals who are active on a waiver chose from those 5 awarded CMOs by July 15th, which exceeded our goal. 9% were auto-assigned to ensure that case management was in place on August 1st. But even those who were auto assigned retain their right, of course, to choose a different case management organization, as does anyone receiving HCBS services as they see fit. So we were very pleased, and the number of partners throughout this process are too numerous to name, but do want to shout out our partners and even some internal BEADS team members who worked really diligently to ensure individuals and families had the information they needed to make an informed choice and to make it before the deadline and avoid auto assignment. Next slide. So we have talked before about about case management and our implementation of value-based payment or value-based purchasing. As a reminder, VBP, as we call it, because we need more acronyms, is really paying for certain outcomes. And typically that value-based payment is as states kind of start looking at value-based payment and implementing that. It's a progressive model, if you will. And we have not used value-based purchasing or payment in BEADS for probably forever. I don't remember it, but I've only been here 23 years, so I guess it's possible something was done before that. But
Holly, I have a quick question. This is Jim. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So this might be similar to the invoice withholds that used to happen with the crisis service. Is that what happens is that the case management organization basically gets paid, but some of it is held back until these metrics are met? Is that how it works?
Yes, Jim.
And how much of the invoice is withheld?
It's a small amount. It's a 2% withhold that CMOs can essentially earn back.
Right.
Quarter. Yep.
I don't know if you remember when we did the crisis service, the last year there was that stipulation.
Yeah.
And it was a 10% is what
right.
For that.
Right. Yeah, we have, and thanks for Jim for mentioning that. We have used withholds are not unusual in any contractual kind of relationship within the state. In HCBS, we haven't, we don't do selective contracting in HCBS except for case management, but in HCBS, we have not, to my knowledge, done value-based payment before. But you're correct. We have done that with contracts in the past, and we did, I believe, with the crisis contract many years ago.
Yeah. And is that something that we might expect? And I'm not saying to tie you down or anything, but with the new waivers and waiver reset, like in 2028, or maybe the youth waiver, to see something that's similar to this?
We would like to, value-based purchasing is a really great way to incentivize providers to provide high quality services and to reward those who do, right? So we are looking at how we could implement VBP future state, perhaps at time of waiver reset. I'm not ready to share much more than that because we haven't really, we have some time, a little bit of time before waiver reset, but we do really want to focus our system on outcomes for individuals, right? Quality over just provision of services and provision of staffing. So VBP is something we'll talk more about. Case management is our way to kind of step into that and see how best to structure value-based payment in the world of HCBS.
Okay, thanks for that explanation.
Sure. Thanks for the question. It's a good question. So For this first contract year with the case management organizations, we are really, as you can see here, it's very compliance driven. As Jim and I were just talking, VBP is really more about quality, but this is where we're starting, is with some compliance in that first year, and then we're already planning and discussing year 2, and what quality outcomes we would want to see or need to see for the individuals we support, in terms of case management in future years of those case management contracts. So we will be, again, changing up exactly what that value-based payment is focused on in year 2 as we move more towards the quality over compliance. We're also, and if you tuned into the QFR, you heard this, we are exploring ways to get some additional technical assistance for case managers, in terms of how to enhance our approach to supporting individuals, and taking a more holistic view of individuals and their needs and resources to address those needs. So more on that at some point in the future, but just know that we are invested in ensuring case managers have the technical support that they need, in addition to what we already offer. Next slide, please. All right. So Kelly already talked or touched on the ICFID level of care requirements. I just want to reiterate some things Kelly mentioned, and that is the requirements for level of care have not changed. These are in CFR. This is the institutional level of care required for Medicaid funded services. That includes, in Indiana, currently the CIH waiver and the family support waiver, as well as our supervised group living services. Again, it's that institutional level of care. So that's presence of an intellectual or developmental disability manifested before the age of 22, likely to continue indefinitely. And then that intellectual disability results in substantial functional limitations in 3 or more of the major life areas listed here. That's self-care, understanding and use of language, learning, mobility, self-direction, and capacity for independent living. So that is a threshold, really, is what we're talking about. That's the threshold to be able to access Medicaid funded services. So again, reiterating, that has not changed. Next slide. Now, Kelly also alluded to this or mentioned this, that the history of inter-I assessments in Indiana. Inter-I assessments have been around for a while in Indiana. I took it back to 2016. I think it might actually go a little bit before that, but the inter-I tools were first used with the nursing facility level of care population. That is part of and has been part of the pre-admission screening resident review or PASSR process, which describes a federally required process for individuals seeking nursing facility placement in a Medicaid funded nursing facility. So the inter-I, specifically what we refer to now as the inter-I home care tool, was used as far back as 2016 in Indiana for the purpose of PASSR. And then it was also used, I around the same time, I believe, for nursing facility level of care for the age and disabled waiver. And another waiver I won't mention because it's gone and it was folded into our waiver array many years ago. In 2024, here in Indiana, we announced the intent to utilize the Inter-I suite of instruments to more appropriately assess the youth population. The home care tool that I mentioned that we've used for more than 10 years is again a tool called the home care tool that's designed for adults. And prior, we were using it for an entire population, right? So in 24, we announced our intent to use the Inter-I suite of instruments to assess the youth population. Then in mid-2025, we announced the intent to utilize the Inter-I suite of instruments for ICF-ID level of care assessments. In mid-2025, we implemented instruments to assess youth for nursing facility level of care. Those are specifically the early years tool and the pediatric home care tool. And then, of course, in January, we implemented ICF-ID level of care assessment tools from the Inter-I suite for all ages. So that includes the Inter-I developmental disabilities, the Inter-I CHIME intellectual disability, and the early years for the very young for ICF-ID level of care. So a couple things, again, going back to or adding to some of the things that Kelly mentioned, where there's some confusion or potentially some confusion. The Inter-I, and I may have said this before, but when I first stepped into conversations about the Inter-I tools, the Inter-I fellows corrected me pretty quickly because I pronounced it the Inter-RAI, and they said, no, it is the Inter-I as in your eye is how you say it. So wanted to share that with you, but also wanted to share, because I never have before, what the Inter-I stands for. That stands for the International Resident Assessment Instrument. I mentioned earlier, we like acronyms. Inter-I is an acronym, but again, it stands for the International Resident Assessment Instrument. So as we were in the throes of this journey, right, on the timeline you see in front of you, we recognized as we were looking at the Inter-I for nursing facility level of care and had that in place and started looking at how can we better assess youth. We looked at all the tools available. Oh, I'm still on the other slide. Thanks, Jess. We looked at all the tools in the suite of instruments. We had in BEADS looked at other tools many years ago. Well, not many years ago, more than 5 years ago, we were looking at what other options are for level of care assessment tools. But as we worked with the Inter-I tools for nursing facility level of care, we recognized and saw an opportunity to really align across all of our HCBS and gain some real consistency in how we assess everyone coming to our doors seeking services and supports. Next slide, Jess, thanks. So previous to this calendar year, we were using a homegrown tool called the LOCSI, the Level of Care Screening Instrument. Again, another acronym, LOCSI. And as we've talked before, that was a homegrown tool. It was very subjective. It was not reliable. It was not designed for youth, and we were using it for youth. And we saw some very inconsistent administration of that. And Kelly alluded to that earlier as well, related to the annual level of care assessments. Those annual level of care assessments are required, have always been required, federally required, that states look at eligibility every year for those Medicaid funded services. And what we learned as we were implementing the Inter-I suite of assessments was that many individuals were not having a true annual reassessment. The LOCSI, the tool that we were using, was being cloned every year, as opposed to case managers completing an actual assessment. That's problematic for lots of reasons. But we had on the LOCSI over a 99% level of care approval rate. So that told us, or reinforced for us, that that tool was not accurately assessing people's needs. So we knew, again, and have known for some time, that we needed to replace that tool. So again, we identified the Inter-I suite of level of care instruments. These are very comprehensive tools. They're validated. They're consistent in how, or they're meant to be consistent in how they assess individuals. We have required for ICFID level of care face-to-face assessments. They have to be face-to-face. That is a little different than the nursing facility level of care assessments, that are conducted by Maximus. Those can be face-to-face, but they can also be done telephonically. That is not the case with the individuals we support with intellectual or developmental disabilities. Those assessments must be face-to-face. And currently we have, that says 96. It's really 94 now, that percentage, and I'll talk about that. Because this is a new implementation, we're seeing some fluctuation with that. But at the time the slide was done, it was a 96% approval rate currently, which still is significantly higher than what we have communicated for over a year now that we would expect to see. So the other thing I do want to clarify, and we talked about it in the QFR, but I want to reiterate it. There is no use of artificial intelligence in either the assessment process or the determination process for these levels of care. There just isn't, and there is no plan for there to be. These assessments are completed by BEADS staff, the service coordinators in our field offices, or by case managers on the annual reassessments. They conduct the assessment, and we finalize the determinations. So just want to be very clear on that. We do, state staff review any Inter-I assessment that appears that the person may not meet functional eligibility, right? So Kelly talked about financial eligibility with Medicaid. Functional eligibility, when I use that term, that's talking about that level of care, that those functional skills, that threshold, right? So if an assessment indicates a person may not meet that functional eligibility, that assessment is reviewed by state staff and validated against records we have on that individual. Next slide.
So Holly, could I,
yes.
and I apologize, but as you were, just for a point of clarity, So I think what you're saying is the Interi tool, the assessment itself, does not determine eligibility. BEADS is making the final determination of eligibility, whether it be we reviewed, yes, denied, reviewed, yes, eligible. Is that a correct statement or am I inaccurate?
No, that's correct. Now, we don't review every approval. We do look backs on those. But yes, the Interi does not make the final determination. The final determination, particularly, and we take a lot of care and diligence when we have assessments that indicate that a person may not meet that functional eligibility. It is not a rubber stamp, if you will. It really is a review validating that assessment against our records. Thank you. Next slide, please.
There were a couple of questions
Oh, okay.
in the
Sure.
chat. Do you know the percentage of pending denials that are reviewed by state staff that are determined ineligible? Then also where you find the person functionally eligible?
I do not have that data in terms of those assessments that indicate the person may not meet that functional eligibility, but we will get that. I want to reiterate, this is still pretty new for us, for everyone, in terms of the assessment and the review. And we are taking a lot of time to make sure that on those assessments where people may not meet that functional eligibility or that level of care, that we're doing that validation on that specific assessment. So we do have a significant, what I would say, a significant number that are pending review by state staff. So we will get that data for sure and provide that to this advisory committee, but I don't have it for you today.
And then the next question, thanks. I'm just reading these. I hope.
Oh, yeah, no, I can
I'm
see them
reading
now, Derek. Thank you. I'm
reading these because I have a question, and I'm like, it would be rude before jumping before these.
Holly, if you read them, or Derek does, just make sure to read it so that the people know what the question is, if that's okay.
I will read the next one. You mentioned that 94% approval was still higher than anticipated. What approval rate would be expected?
We communicated again for more than a year that we would, and I want to be clear when I say this, we would not be surprised if we had around a 10% denial rate, 90% approval rate. Now, will we reach that? I think we will. Could it be less? Yes. Could it be slightly more? Perhaps. These tools are new to us. Again, the criteria hasn't changed, but I want to remind everyone, we weren't even getting accurate annual assessments for people in services, right? And we know that whether we're talking, when people are walking in our door, 99% of people meeting that criteria would not be accurate, could not be accurate. So this initial implementation, I think it's possible we'll see higher or lower approval rates, if you will, at least for a time being, as we are assessing people who perhaps haven't met eligibility for a number of years, and that was not seen because the annual assessment was done inappropriately, or because our tool that we were using previous to the Interi were not accurately assessing individuals' needs, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Holly. Next question is consistency in delivery still an issue with Interi? We are still hearing that individuals are not present when the assessment is completed.
Oh, Brandy, I wish I could say no, it's not, but we are hearing that there are case managers out there that are not completing the assessment with the individual present. We haven't heard a lot of those, but to be frank, one is too many. So if you hear that and can get specifics to us, we are in ongoing communication with the CMOs. And when we hear anything like that, that is addressed very quickly with those case management organizations. But it is very helpful if when someone learns, and particularly this group, right? Because this is a partnership here. If you can give us specifics, like a specific name of case manager and case management organization, we are better able to act on that and correct that if we know exactly who that was. I understand people don't want to get anyone in trouble. People don't want people to get upset, but this is important stuff, right? And if it means someone, we have to address our vendor very specifically, and they have to address an employee very specifically, then that's what it means. But this is too important to be concerned about, somebody being upset about it, right? I'm just being very honest here. This is important stuff. So if the more specifics you all can give us, we will address. But again, we continue supporting case management organizations through our learning collaborative around the Inter-Eyes, providing and making, our team available when there are questions, sharing information with the CMOs to ensure that they're training their staff, that the mentors within their agency with regard to the Inter-Eyes are supporting case managers in the completion of these assessments. So yes, and we want to know when there's a problem like that. So please, reach out. If you hear that and can get us specifics, that will help us be a little more targeted in our response to those.
Hey, Holly.
Holly, can I ask my question now? And that is, it was a question that I got yesterday. And I could answer it, but I didn't want to dance around and misstate. So I figure this might be a better venue because I think you have better experience. So the question was from a family member whose child went through the process, and they went through the process with their child. And there was a question, the person's question to me was, why is it so detailed? Why is there so much information? And why is some of that information really not maybe age appropriate, I think is the word that was used. I think there was questions about promiscuity for, I think, a pretty young child. I think I have some understanding as to why, but I thought it would be better for maybe that to be addressed by you. Do you mind just having some?
No.
Thanks.
I appreciate the question, Derek, and it's a good one, right? So I mentioned earlier we have the 3 tools, the early years, which is 0 through 3, right? And then the Chime ID tool, which is 4 through 17, and then the adult tool. So first, the tools are very comprehensive, right? Because today we use them for that level of care assessment and also to support service planning, right? And I don't administer these. I do have some knowledge, but I'm not the expert when you compare me to our field staff. But there are questions in there that are not related at all to eligibility, right? But they are related to identifying the person's needs. They do support identifying a person's needs across a huge range, environmental, even employment. It has questions around employment. Now, it's not 20 questions, but there's questions around that. They're all questions about, and there's questions, of course, about functional skills, right? Questions about clinical things like, medical conditions and all. They are very comprehensive. But that's one of the reasons we like them. And we think that they are a really great option when trying to assess individuals' needs, because it helps that case manager and team take a look at the needs, a more holistic look at the individual. Now, as far as the questions, some of them don't appear age appropriate. That tool, the Chime ID, because it covers a pretty large age range, 4 through 17. I might have said 18 earlier, but it's 4 through 17. There are questions that may be appropriate for a teenager, but for a 5-year-old, not, right? So that recently was brought to our attention. So we're going to follow up with assessors. You know, when those trainings are done with assessors, they're trained to be very consistent in administering those tools to ensure fidelity of the assessment. However, a question around, oh, it just escaped my brain, but you said something, Derek. A promiscuity, I think, is what you said, to a 5-year-old. You know, probably doesn't need to be directly asked that way, right? So now, sometimes I hate to say it, but for some kids that are 9 or 10, sometimes it is, right? Certainly for 16, 17, probably a really great question. But it's mainly what we're hearing is that tool that serves that larger age range of the 4 through 17. So we'll be diving into that in a collaborative to kind of talk through that with the mentors and things about how they can support case managers in how to handle those questions when you're sitting with a 5-year-old, for example. Did that answer your question, Derek? Okay, great.
Hey,
great.
Holly, I'm gonna
Yeah.
hold Michael. We'll get some of the Holly
Yeah,
has some more
that's what I was
slides,
gonna
and we might get
suggest.
to your. I'm not ignoring your questions, but she might answer these as we're moving. She's got some more slides, so if that's okay, Michael, and I know there's some others. If Holly continue, and then we'll make sure to get those when you're done, because you might answer some of these. Is that okay? Okay.
Okay with me if it's okay with everyone else.
You know, I'll keep you going. You know.
Yeah, and you guys know I can talk, right? Like,
I'm just kidding. Michael, remind me if I miss you, because I've got who needs to be, but in case I forget.
Okay, so wanted to just share this this data. If you join the QFR, I believe we shared it there as well, I believe. But what you'll see here is overall 94% approval rate. With the early years tool, the 0 to 3, it's at this time at the end of July, it was a 97% approval rate. The Chime DD, the 4 through 17, 96, and then the intellectual disability, a 93. So this is as of July 30th. So you can see the numbers. There's 16,000 that have been finalized. So 16,000 assessments finalized. There are about 1,600 that still need to be finalized that are under review. So just FYI on that, when I mentioned that you may see the percentages fluctuate because we have a significant number we're still working through. The breakdown that you don't see here that I want to share, and I think it might have been a question, is what does it look like on reassessments versus other assessments, like initial assessments or waiting list assessments? So we are looking, and I'll include this in future advisory meetings. When we look at the annuals versus the like initials and waiting list, it's very consistent. The annuals, we're seeing about a 94%, or right at a 94% approval rate on annuals, and a 93% approval rate on initials and waiting list. Anything that a case manager, so one way to distinguish it is case management's here doing those annual reassessments, and then beads are doing all the other ones, right? We're seeing a lot of consistency, 94% approval on reassessments, 93% approval on those other assessments that are done by state staff. So I think that was a question, and we'll include that in future meetings, but wanted to share that we're seeing consistency there.
Holly, another question, just this is pertinent to this, and I don't think is on a slide. Do you know the percentage of pending denials that are reviewed by state staff that are determined ineligible, and then also where you find the person functionally eligible?
Yeah, we're working on getting that data,
Okay.
so we'll report that in future state
Got
too.
it.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Let me see if there was one. Nicole says the tool assessment had components of 3 days or less verbiage. And my understanding is there is a lot of confusion around that during assessments. So I think she's just giving some feedback about that.
Yeah, and there's some items in the assessments that do what we call 3-day look back. Others do a 7-day look back. And just high level, the reason we do annual reassessments and the reason these tools, right, have look back periods is because we need a picture of that person, right, and their functional skills, right? So I mentioned with the LOCSI tool, those the cloning that was happening, which when I say cloning, our system allowed, our IT system allowed case managers to literally generate a copy of the previous LOCSI. The intent was that it could then be edited. What we found is that in many cases it was not, right? But the LOCSI, you would see a lot of historical information, right? And with the IDD waivers, we know that historically people, once they're on, they stay on, right? For many years, sometimes their lifetime, which is fine, right? If they're eligible, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, right? If they meet that functional eligibility and they have needs that the waivers can address, that's fine. But people were maintaining on the waiver because we were looking at historical information, how they functioned, when they were a child, when they're now 21. And that's a real example, right? Or how they, what their skill levels were when they were 4, but now they're in high school. So we really needed a tool, right, that assessed today, not saying that there's no place for an individual's history, just saying when we're looking at functional eligibility, we have to look at how that person functions now.
Hey, Holly.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I wanted to add here, and I know you're going to get to this. As you indicated, we're still monitoring the implementation of this, as with any process, not just the Enter-I tool. Anytime there is human participation, when human beings are involved, there is a possibility for inaccuracy. And you'll get to that later. That's why there's that secondary review after that interview. That's why there's an appeal process. And I also feel that I would be remiss because the attention has been, and I understand why, if an individual feels they have been inaccurately assessed, they want that addressed. And to your point, one is too many. We want to make sure that we're doing this properly. But I do believe you have shared with me, and I know others have shared with me, there are individuals who not only say, yes, I'm ready to move on, this is accurate. We have some people that are actually excited that through the support of the waiver, they've gained the skills and they're ready now to move on and move beyond. So I don't want it lost that not everyone who is being determined as no longer meeting functional eligibility is an error or is upset or distraught about it. I'm not trying to diminish any other concern, but I also feel it's important to note there's two sides to that coin.
Thanks, Kelly. And I would absolutely agree. We all know we support individuals in our services that may need some level of support their entire lives. We also support individuals in our services who won't. We're able to really support them in ways that foster their independence, that help them gain skills, that help them build those connections in their community where they don't need us. And that's a beautiful thing, not because of money or funding or cost, but because we all know quality of life, the more friends you have, the more a part of a community you are, that can really enhance a person's quality of life. So we have heard of individuals that when they're assessed and determined, that decision or determination is finalized, that they're like, okay, that's fine, that's fine. That's good, even to Kelly's point. That's great. Excited about it, excited about their next chapter, which does not diminish the need for a transition plan. I will say that to make sure that that person knows who to reach out to if they should develop a need, right? But it's not necessarily a bad thing, and often could be a really good thing because it signals that individuals have actually benefited from the services and supports they've been receiving. And we've helped them. And when I say we, I mean our providers and their team have helped them actually reach the outcomes that they wanted when they probably started in services. So thank you, Kelly, for that ad. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide because I do want to dig into if level of care is not met. So we know there are some people who are not meeting level of care that did previously. Now, for those who are just walking in our door for the first time, one of the things that beads, if you look at our mission and vision, it is to connect people with resources, right? For those who are already in service and then experience what we'll call a loss of level of care or no longer meeting that functional eligibility, there is a process. And I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that. As I've mentioned, state staff review any case where the person may not meet that functional eligibility prior to finalizing that decision, okay? We look at other records that we have for the individual. The individual or their legal rep, like if they have a legal guardian, are given written notice of the level of care determination. That includes their right to appeal. It also includes a second letter today that is a written notice of a 90-day transition period. Services remain in place. If the person chooses to appeal, services remain in place through the appeal, including case management, and case managers are tasked with development or facilitating a transition plan for those 90 days to connect people with other community resources or whatever the case may be. Why? But it's really that transition planning is talking about, okay, let's get a plan here. That transition planning is intentionally kicked off when that final determination is made. it does not wait to see how the appeal turns out, right? It starts immediately because it takes time to plan supports for someone, to connect them to other resources in the event that the appeal is found in favor of the state. So we want to be proactive. We need teams to be proactive to the benefit of the individual to start that planning as soon as that final determination is made. But again, services will remain in place through that appeal process. If an individual believes there was an error in the assessment, they can appeal. They have their due process rights. We have received, as of last week, over 200 appeal requests. The Office of Administrative Law Proceedings, they handle that piece, if you will. They are the entity that the requests for appeals get sent to. If someone sends it to us, we get it over to OALP. Again, that's Office of Administrative Law Proceedings. That's what we call them. And they will schedule the hearing. That hearing isn't scheduled within a matter of days. It could take a couple weeks, but it will get scheduled. Kelly, I saw you come off mute.
Yeah, so Holly, just as a point of clarification, I know you're going to go into the appeals process. And I'm kind of responding to, I hear from folks, I talk to people, I read. So let's go back. I've had my interview, the assessment using the tool. It indicates that may not be functionally eligible. That then is reviewed by the a team of BEADS personnel. And in my instance, they reviewed my record in addition to the assessment, and they said, yes, Kelly, you're not functionally eligible. So then there's a letter that's prepared and that's sent to me. Now I'm not immediately terminated from the waiver. So I'm going to get notice that the assessment process, those two layers, has found me not to be functionally eligible. And it's going to give me a date. I think it's 90 days, right? So based on this, your waiver would end on X date, but that's 3 months away from that date of that letter, or right close to that, right? Is that correct? So my waiver isn't immediately terminated based on the day that the team determines I'm functionally ineligible, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, that is correct. It is not. The exception would be if the person said, okay, I'm done. I don't want any more services. And then they would have
And they have the right to
sign
do
a voluntary
that.
withdrawal,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
To stop services like that. But no, services are not terminated. And there is nothing in, because I did read something recently, there's nothing in our IT system that terminates a waiver when level of care is not met. Okay, that takes a human to go in and terminate a waiver. So no, it remains in place through that appeal process and for that 90 days. Great question. The other thing I do want to go back a little bit. So thank you, Kelly, for jumping in because it cued me to mention something. The only thing a person has to do to request the appeal is to send in that, there's a second page on that level of care determination letter that has everything on it, and they sign and say they want to appeal. They don't have to provide supporting documents at that time. They don't have to do anything other than raise their hand essentially and let us know that they want to appeal that decision. That's it. And then Office of Administrative Law Proceedings will schedule it. They'll be notified of the hearing. And that's when they would want or need those supporting documents once they have a hearing date. Not that they should wait to prepare, but just saying they do not have to have supporting documents ready just to request an appeal. All right. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, please.
Just real quick, I think it is pertinent, Holly. It just, does the assessment, the tool, excuse me, include screening questions for adverse childhood experiences to identify co-occurring trauma? Do you know off the top of your head if any of the?
I'd have to look.
Okay.
That's a great question. But I'll have to look to answer that with confidence.
Okay.
So if we can put a pin in that.
Yeah, no worries. Just wanted to
I'll
check
take a
if,
look at
okay,
that
got it.
and
Okay,
follow up.
thanks. Okay, I'm gonna move on. We're getting close on time.
Okay. I'll talk
So
fast.
I want to make sure you have enough
Right.
time to.
Thank you.
So I know one of the questions is appeals, but I think you might address this here. So
thank you. So individuals can request those appeals. Like I said, if they feel like there's been an error, they can, appeal that determination within 33 days of the date on the letter. So let me clarify that, because I actually misspoke recently and said 33 days from receipt of the letter, but it is 33 days from the date on the letter. Again, they'll be notified when there's a hearing. The other thing we've heard is that someone shared that told an individual or a family member that they have to have an attorney in order to appeal, and that's not accurate. They do not have to have an attorney to request an appeal. So, next slide.
Is there information in, like, does the letter include information about, like, further in the process around what kind of documentation you might need? Or like, who is communicating that with families and individuals?
So OALP, when they send notice of the hearing.
Can you say what the acronym is? Sorry.
That's the Office of Administrative Law Proceedings. They include in their letter information on the appeal, and people can bring essentially whatever information they feel pertinent to the appeal.
Got it.
So I hope that answers.
Do you have a recommendation of who, like, if an individual has a question? I think Nicole's just sharing that the process is not being explained, I think, to individuals, or some maybe. Do you have any, who would explain that maybe? Or if obviously they don't have to hire an attorney, but who would it be a case manager? I mean, what typically happens in terms of if you have questions about an appeal or how to go about it?
A case manager can explain the appeal process.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I would also just note the Office of Administrative Law Proceedings has a webpage that outlines all of the appeal processes for FSSA, which is the agency within which BEADS operates, and those appeal processes could be referenced there as well.
Great. I'll put that too in the chat. It's probably, as Kathy mentioned, there's also, they have an email as well that they utilize, but if you Google it too, but I'll see if I can find it as we're talking. Thanks, Kathy.
Hey, Holly, I'm going to have you go back because I read one of the questions too, and I think it relates to this process, but this isn't really an OALP process. So there's been a level of care determination, found not functionally eligible. I get a letter, there's a date, 90 days, right? We don't immediately terminate the waiver, it's 90 days away. And I think people think, well, what if my hearing date appeal isn't until after that 90-day? So I believe what happens is in the system, as soon as we know, your BEADS team knows that there's been an appeal filed that case or that way it's flagged in the system. So we're aware of that. And you said earlier, there's no automatic system termination. We didn't enter that 90-day date, and on that date, it's going to terminate. One of our team members, I believe, has to go in and do that. So you might want to speak a little bit about that, Holly, because I know there's a little nuance.
Sure, sure. No, thank you for that. So yes, so the 90-day transition period is a transition period, right? And yes, families and individuals are given that 90 days, right? But we're also, again, stating services remain in place through the appeal process. So if an individual, let's just say, an individual's appeal, and again, I don't know that this is going to happen because we don't schedule the appeal hearings, right? But if an individual's appeal hearing is on day 88, right? We're not going to discontinue services on day 90. Their appeal process is still ongoing. So services will remain in place until that appeal hearing's held, and then, you know, that appeal process is finished at whatever point it is, right? A decision is rendered from that appeal. Does that make sense?
Holly, I'm going to move you along, okay?
Okay.
Just for right now, because we're getting
alrighty
somewhat behind. So I just want to make sure.
Thank you. Next slide. Just real quickly, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I just want to note again, we're using the Intrice suite of tools for level of care assessments, for service planning, and also for future use in the design of our support level framework. Again, they're very comprehensive tools in terms of identifying a person's needs. So next, you can go ahead and move on. I'll keep things moving. Want to talk a little bit about the waiver reset goals. This is not anything new, nor has it changed. Our goals are still to simplify the system, improve support coordination. Some of the ways we're looking to do that is through that additional technical assistance and support for case management organizations, enhancing quality outcomes. Again, we mentioned earlier, thank you, Jim, for the prompt. Develop a way to pay providers for quality and not just quantity, right? And then implementing a sustainable service delivery system. So those goals have not changed. They continue to be our North Star, if you will. Next slide. Quickly, these also have not changed. The levers for quality assurance and cost containment include the support needs tiers, the support budget tiers, and then the waiver design and number of waivers. Next slide. So waiver resets, a big initiative, shall we say. So we've broken it into phases so that we can address it kind of in chunks, if you will, or in phases. Phase 1, which is now through 2027, includes that change in case management structure, the care coordination, technical assistance and support, and now also intended to launch July of 2027 is a youth waiver, establishing that waiver and initiating transitions to that waiver. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide so I can talk a little more in detail about the youth waiver. So
sorry, Holly, you have time. I mean, I just don't want to rush you too much. You should be okay now.
Okay.
Because you're moving.
Right.
You
got
picked up pace. Sorry.
15, right?
So yeah, I don't want to rush you.
Okay. All right. So we are planning as an early phase of waiver reset, launching a youth waiver. That's planned for July 2027, which, guys, feels like next month. It will support individuals 0 through 21 years of age. It will, at launch, include only the youth that are currently supported on the family support waiver. It will also include the family support waiver cap, the 26,482, I believe. I might have my numbers reversed on the a little bit. We'll include that FSW cap in the launch of the youth waiver, and that's really due to the fact that we won't have the support level and support budget framework ready for July of 27. That'll come with waiver reset. We are making proposing some modifications to services to be focused more on youth. And we are, again, looking at that enhanced care coordination and a holistic view of needs, services, and outcomes as we launch the youth waiver in July of 27. We're also exploring financial eligibility for youth, and we'll begin collecting income information from families of youth. This information gathering is literally just information gathering to inform potential future decisions. And this was discussed a little bit in the QFR as well. Again, we're just looking at gathering information because currently we don't know what the income information is for families of youth supported on waivers. So this is we're really just talking about gathering information to inform potential future decisions with regard to financial eligibility for the
So,
waiver.
Holly, I know that just gathering information, you guys have a right to gather information and everything, but it clearly, begs the question, like, okay, what do you do with that? It could be that there's going to be a determination at some point that youth of affluent parents, for example, maybe are ineligible, or at some level. I don't know what that level would be, but I may be jumping way ahead. But if the state were to put a financial floor on youth waiver, would that then be something that the state would be looking at for the family supports waiver? I mean, you're not gathering that information, but if you had, because a lot of people on the family supports waiver maybe are children, but they're adult children living at their parents' home.
Right, right.
And so, one could maybe draw the line from, okay, there's going to be a limit on who is eligible based on family income on the youth waiver. Would that maybe then be applied to the family supports waiver in the future?
Like an adult waiver?
Yeah, well, the family supports waiver is still going to exist, right? I mean, you're just going to pull the youth out of the family supports
Right,
waiver
which
and
would
start a-
essentially make it an adult waiver,
Right.
Yeah. So no, we are really looking to gather information on youth
Okay.
in HCBS. Yeah.
And I would just want to speak to, I think, obviously looking at the youth, because there's an income disregard for the youth. There isn't one for adults. We are accounting for their income. And so I think there is a lot of information for the team for FSSA to consider as it relates to income and how we would move forward if we were even to move forward with that. But if we're not collecting it today, which we aren't, we have no information or data to tell us really anything about what would be of interest to either FSSA or the legislature as far as this, as looking at this as a potential policy to implement, and that goes kind of beyond our team to think about. But I think our concern is that if there are questions or suggestions around removing the parental income disregard, we really have no information to inform anyone about what that looks like today. And so we're kind of in a bit of a tough spot to say we want to collect the information so that we have it. We don't want to burden people with it either. We recognize that that is an additional ask of people. But we also know that without the information, we are not well equipped to make an informed decisions and inform others as well.
Thanks, Kathy.
Holly, Kim had a question just to, so if a youth is on the CIH, they stay on the CIH.
For now,
She
yes.
just- okay, I wanted to make sure
Yeah.
that you said that again.
Yeah, so the youth, this is for implementation or for launch in July of 27 at time of waiver reset, when we're also rolling out the support level framework and the support budgets, all youth would transition to the youth waiver. Is that? So
Well,
it's
at
just
launch, so
starting.
it's kind of a 2 at launch, it will
It's
stay,
phased.
but
Yes,
okay.
yes. The youth waiver at implementation will just include the youth on the FS. At the time of waiver reset, all youth on the other waivers would move to the youth waiver. Great question, Kim. Thank you. And I think I see Carrie has her hand up.
I did. Thanks, Holly. In terms of collection of income information for families, would it be the same as what Medicaid is typically asking in terms of providing like all of bank statements, pay stubs, basically all financial information, or is it simply a question of give us your range? And then second part of that is maybe more of a statement than a question, because I know that this would have to be beyond beads and DDARS, right? It's a FSSA thing and legislative, but I'm curious if there's been any discussion around considering this, a family, including family income as part of the determination of eligibility for minors, what kind of burden that would then put on the educational system, because a lot of individuals that might not meet those income qualifications are then going to lose that secondary Medicaid coverage if they have private insurance, and then that loses access to Medicaid. I'm totally blanking on the term, the administrative claiming that schools can do through Medicaid to get funds to provide services. So not only are families losing services that are, as Kate also stated in the comments, that are typically not available through private insurance, then schools are then given an undue burden of having to provide services with less funding. So,
Holly, would you mind if I jump in for just 1 second? I do want to clarify that we are not saying there is a plan to implement any change at this point in parental disregard or the requirements around youth and Medicaid financial eligibility. I believe that Secretary Rogue tried to address this during the quarterly financial review. There was a question. In all honesty, and I think all of us are aware, first of all, we would not be the body that makes this determination because this exists in code. This would be a legislative decision, correct? But we would be asked to inform any decision being made. And so while we are at a different place right now, the revenue forecast came in better than projected. A lot of things have changed. If you go back in the fall of 2023, when we had the huge Medicaid forecast variance, and then revenue projections came out that said they were going to fall well short, there was inquiry about, as there always is, do we need to look at things like this parental disregard? And Holly, I will let you answer this better, but we do want to collect, we don't want to be burdensome now. We're not asking to determine financial eligibility. What we want to know, and we have no idea, is what would be the impact if X or Y, so that we could inform a recommendation. So Carrie, some of the things that you just mentioned would be if and when that decision were to be made. And that's an if first.
Right, but
Then
I'm sure you
we,
understand that that's
yeah,
problematic and like
we
worrisome that
would
that's gonna
factor
be
that
considered.
in though. That would be the kind of feedback we would give. It wouldn't just be, it would be, here's all the things to consider, to your point. So
Right.
I don't, I think my fear, I'll just put it out there, is that we're trying to be very transparent in why we're collecting. But my fear is we ignite panic and fear. There is no looming change at this point. There may never be, but we want to be informed so that we can provide an appropriate analysis and recommendation if and when that time comes, because it has been asked historically, not just in recent years. This has been looked at historically. So this is to be equipped with information. And Holly, feel free. I just don't want to put it out there that there's something looming next month or in the next 3 months, or even in the next, there's nothing going forward to the next legislative. So we're not preparing something behind the scenes. So,
I mean, I think that's helpful to know that this is not being planned, but I still do, I do appreciate the transparency, but it absolutely is worrisome to families to even think that this could be considered.
Sure.
Because it would be really life-changing for a lot of families.
Yeah, and Carrie, I appreciate that, and I do understand that. When we say impactful for a lot of families, like that's kind of what we're getting at. We don't know what that means. What is a lot? That's really what we need to know, right? Like what would be the impact if, and that's an if in all caps and underline and in italics, if something changed. Like we don't know what that is. So we're not going to go in and ask families to provide paycheck stubs and bank statements and all that stuff, right? We're going to need just some very basic information for them to report to us so that we have some idea of what that a lot, or a few looks like, right? That's all we're trying to do, is get information to inform if that question gets asked. Like, what would it look like if we change the financial eligibility? And we would be able to at least provide some kind of information and some kind of data to respond to that question. Because the impact is important. And whether we're talking about legislators or whatever entity, the impact needs to be known as best as we can know it before any decision is made. So,
Kim, Han, I saw your question. Holly, I think that's such a good question, and I think that's an opportunity to clarify what waiver really means, what it means to waive.
Yeah, the waiver isn't, when we talk about waivers, we're not talking about waiving the income or the parental disregard. That's actually a disregard today in Indiana, is a parental income disregard for individuals, for youth who have a home and community-based services waiver. The waive, when we think about waivers, is really waiving that institutional care, right, in favor of home and community-based services. That's a good question, Kim.
Can I just add one more thing? That's
Sure.
Fascinating, because when Kelly started the conversation about Medicaid, the people that are on the waivers are on Medicaid because they're intellectually disabled, not based on their income, like the HIP people are. And so to my understanding, as just a layperson who's been doing this for about 25 years, is that income waiver got us on Medicaid, being on Medicaid, so my daughter is significantly intellectually disabled, and her Medicaid always just goes on. I've never had to do anything, but that is what enables us to get on these waivers. No?
No, actually, income for 18 plus, regardless of the type of Medicaid, is looked at. You cannot be over the
Sure.
income limits and resource limits.
So
But
that's
it's
like
just
that's
so
like
that
her bank
you're
account can't have
senior.
more than $2,000 in it,
Right.
right?
It's once you turn 18, it's your income and assets.
Right,
When
not
you're
family.
a minor child, right? It for strict Medicaid eligibility, not waiver, it looks at the family income, the household, right? For Medicaid eligibility. Unless the child has a Medicaid waiver, a HCBS Medicaid waiver, then parental income is disregarded.
Okay, so the waiver disregards the income.
The income tells Medicaid, or the waiver tells Medicaid for, in the case of someone under 18, to disregard parental income.
Okay, that's good clarification, because I think that's not necessarily how I've always understood it. So thank you.
Remember the goal of waiver reset to simplify? Yeah, we're not losing sight of the need to do that wherever we can, because it is a lot to understand. Can we go to the next slide, please? So phase 2 of waiver reset planned for 2028, hopefully in the first quarter of calendar year. We will be launching the support needs budget framework across all the BEADS waivers, transition the remaining under 22 populations to the youth waiver, and then a new array of waivers for waivers for 22 plus age population. And then of course, a revised service array across all waivers. So we have a group of stakeholders called the SBCAB, which Support Budget Community Advisory Board. Have to look at that and make sure I get it right. That's been meeting for quite some time, for months, and will continue to meet that talk through these, waiver reset topics. So again, we're continuing the journey towards that full waiver reset, and continue the engagement with stakeholders and you all as our stakeholders too, and keeping you looped in on what's happening in the realm of waiver reset. If we can go to the next slide, please. I want to just talk real briefly about the waiver amendments that went effective August 1st. We've already talked quite a bit about the case management before implementation. We're also effective August 1st, the RHS daily rate is now mandated for eligible individuals with Algo 3 or higher that are sharing staffing and living outside the family home. We clarified allowable service provision by relatives, non-LRIs. We updated some documentation requirements, specifically for some services have a template for quarterly reports, with the intent of that being some consistency in reporting, but also really trying to focus our system on outcomes. Outcomes for individuals, outcomes of the services individuals are receiving, to ensure that those services are getting that person closer to what they have designated as their desired outcomes. A limit on our benefits counseling service to mirror the limit that VR has historically had for a similar service. the addition of the reserve capacity on CIH for the people ending their money follows the person eligibility period of 365 days, revision of the short-term budget request criteria, and then the removal of certain reserve capacity categories on the CIH, including transition from 100% state funds, which we didn't have any and haven't had any in years. That's an historic kind of holdover in the waiver. And then the choosing to leave the ICF IID, which are the group homes. So want to take just a minute to talk a little bit about that. So, you know, with the limited waiver capacity, right, that we have, and the fact that we are at capacity on some of our waivers and very close on others, recognizing that when we start a new waiver year, like for the FS, there were some additional slots, new slots available. We saw a lot of individuals accessing the CIH by entering and then leaving our group homes. With limited waiver capacity, we really want to ensure that with that CIH waiver, that that ability to access that waiver is available for those who are in emergent situations, those with the greatest need. So just wanted to put that out there again as to the why we have made that change. Now, one of the other things that we talked about previously and then changed, we had intended in the set of waiver amendments that went effective on August 1st to do a rate adjustment for certain personal care services. You can go to the next slide, Jess, sorry, involving living caregivers, specifically attendant care, PAC, and residential hab hourly. We had proposed that we adjust those rates when the caregiver lives with the individual. Now, when those rates were developed, back when we did our rate review that went into effect, I believe in 2023, we had specific rate buildups that we shared with stakeholders. That was a whole rate review process. If you weren't around or engaged, then it was quite the initiative. A lot of feedback from providers and other stakeholders, but we had proposed to remove the in the rate buildup the allowance for travel time and mileage for direct support staff as they travel between different locations in the course of their workday. If the caregiver lives with the individual, there's no travel between work sites during the workday. So our proposal was to remove just that piece in the rate buildup in order to align the rate with what was actually happening. We learned as we proposed that and submitted that to CMS, we learned and heard a lot that providers, we had put forth, this should not impact the wage of the DSP, right? It should not impact the wage of the DSP in any way because that piece of the rate buildup was not touched. What we heard was that providers were intending to decrease DSP wages. That was never our intent. So we pulled that with CMS's approval. We pulled that piece from those waiver amendments, and we'll be revisiting that in future amendments. Because again, our intent was not to decrease wages, right? It was to align the rate with what was actually occurring. So we'll be revisiting that, but we did pull that out of the amendments with CMS approval. So just wanted to make sure that this group was aware that we did that and why we did that. Next slide, please. All right. So again, if you were watched the QFR or have watched the recording, this is going to look familiar because this was reported in the QFR and typically is in every QFR. You'll see our active individuals on each of the 4 beads administered waivers, as well as the numbers of people waiting. Those are in the graphs that you see. And you'll see there continues to be an increase in the number of people we support. Now, the TBI looks a little funny, and I want to explain some of that. First of all, it's a very small waiver, 200 slots. Secondly, that waiver year starts in January. So you'll see that dip in January, and then it gradually builds up as we work to refill slots that were vacated the previous waiver year. And you can see that in some of the other waiver years if we had it broken down a little more. But that's why you see that dip on the TBI waiver in January. So again, just trending, we continue, to serve more people. And I keep saying that because, some of the things that that we've heard, that we've read, is that there's a connection between people not meeting level of care and the state saving money, right? And I think this is evidence that that's not the intent here, right? We want to serve the right people, provide the right services to the right people for the right time, right? For the right amount of time. We continue to bring people into services. Even with our limited waiver capacity, we continue to bring people into services, and we're committed as well to getting those waivers to capacity when there's a need for it. So when someone goes off of a waiver, right, if someone loses level of care and come off that waiver, that slot will be refilled. Now, it might be the next waiver year, depending on the timing and because of CMS requirements. But again, we continue to bring people into service. It has not, that hasn't, we are not, level of care decisions are not related to cost savings.
So Holly, could you address, because I don't know that we've got the dashboard up yet, and if we do, I apologize. There were invitations released in July, and then I believe you'll be releasing invitations on Monday to the family support waiver. So
yes.
I don't know if you can address those numbers. And you referenced there actually were 800 plus new slots added to the family support waiver this year.
Yes, that's correct. And I did not include those in this slide or in this slide deck. I'm sorry, Kelly. I will draw attention to the number of invitations we issued last fiscal year, which is the far right column of the table that you see. And on the family support waiver in last fiscal year alone, it was over 2,000 people. Those are new invitations. On the CIH, it was 195. On health and wellness, it was over 4,400. And then on traumatic brain injury, it was 23. Again, very small waiver, right? But still some growth. So, we do, to Kelly's point, continue to see and continue to bring people into service. The other thing on the table that I would want to highlight for this group, you'll see the waiver capacity, the slots assigned as of the end of June, and then open invitations, right? If you look at for example, some of those waivers, the health and wellness, I believe, is the one I wanted to draw attention to. Anyway, there are situations where, because we have some awareness of what we call the throughput, right? Particularly on like the health and wellness waiver, there are times that we will invite slightly more than the number of slots we have available when we're getting, particularly at the end of a waiver year, because we know not everyone will make it to active. And when we're at the end of a waiver year, we know that we will likely have additional slots the next waiver year because of individuals who've left waiver, and because potentially in some of our waivers, there is a limited amount of growth each waiver year, if that makes sense. And we do continue inviting in July, to Kelly's point. I'm sorry, I don't have those numbers with me.
Yeah,
Right.
I think Monday we're gonna do 600 family support.
Yeah.
This coming Monday on the 7th, is that the
Yes.
17th? And then last month it was approximately that number. I don't know if it was 500 or 600, but
I think it was 500 last
yeah.
month, I think.
So, yeah.
Thank you, Kelly. So again, just reiterating, we continue to see growth and bringing people on as we can, and working through invites. And we also last year, of course, implemented the 180-day timeline on the FS and CIH, again, in recognition of the need to address the slot capacity and ensure that we're getting those invitations out when there's availability. Next slide. Lastly, this slide was also included in the data that you all received in advance. I know this is an area of interest, and wanted to share again the CIH application. We are, we have limited capacity on the CIH, and we have the categories you note here. So the non-emergency categories on the left-hand side of the slide in text is representative of that top graph on the right. And those applications are from individuals, or CIH requests are from individuals transitioning from nursing facilities or the state psychiatric hospital. Those, I see my typo, aging is spelled wrong, my apologies. Aging out of DOE or DCS, no longer needing active treatment in supervised group living, or money follows the person. Again, that's that. When an individual has been on money follows the person, which means they came out of an institution that may be, ESN, CRM&F, could be a nursing facility, could be it can't be a state psychiatric, but anyway, could be a nursing facility. When they finish their 365 days of eligibility for money follows the person, right, they can access the CIH. The emergency placement categories on the left-hand side of your screen in text represents the graph to the right. Death of primary caregiver 80 years plus, evidence of abuse or neglect in current setting, and then evidence of other health and safety risks. What I want to stress here is we have a good number of those pending decisions, but we are at capacity, and I want to assure this group we do have an escalation path if there is a particularly emergent situation, and we will expedite a quick review of that, and if there is capacity on the CIH waiver, move that forward. For adults, there is also the option of supervised group living that we can offer as a possible alternative if there is not CIH capacity. So just wanted to, be transparent about that. All right. Jess, was that my last slide? It was. All right. Let me look at the questions here.
Lexi also has her hand up.
Oh, yes, Lexi.
Hi, Holly. I think a lot of people, including myself, are still wondering, with there no longer being reserved capacity for people coming out of group homes to be put directly on the CIH, and with waiver reset coming up, how is that planning to be addressed as far as like if someone's in an SGL and they want out of the SGL, will they sit on the wait list for the new set of support budgets or for the FSW, depending on when they want to come out? Like, how is that looking, if that makes sense?
No, it is. Yeah, that does make sense, Lexi, and I think it's a great question. As we think about waiver reset, we don't have all those details fleshed out in terms of reserve capacity and all that. I think that's some future discussion. So would be interested in any feedback you might want to send us, or self advocates might want to send us regarding that. That's a great question, though, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Let's see if there's some other questions. Okay, there is a
Holly,
question.
do you see Carrie's, was there a public announcement about the FSW invitations restarting?
You know what? Carrie, I'll have to check. I feel like we've put out a lot of announcements lately. I would need to check that to say for sure. Yeah, we are starting a new waiver year though. On July 16th was a new waiver year for the FS. So I would say it's pretty typical for us to do invitations when a new waiver year starts. And those invitations, as in case there's anyone on the call here that doesn't know, those invitations are made in writing. So individuals who are being invited are notified in writing that they can move forward or need to move forward with the invitation process. And the letters are pretty detailed on what needs to happen next, as well as the 180-day timeline once someone's been invited. So, yeah, I see another hand up from Kim.
Yeah, sorry if I missed this. How many invitations did you send out recently for the family support waiver?
I believe it was 500 in July. It should be, I think it's going to be 600 come Monday for August.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Jess, do I have time to read a couple questions?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to figure out which ones. I know I'm going through. See if I was going back up the top too to see if I missed.
Oh, well, you go at the top. I'm going to where I think we left off. How's that?
Okay, perfect.
Will there be an evaluation of the economic impact should family caregivers leave the workforce to provide care should their child adult family member lose eligibility? So I think I understand your question, Kate. And I would say there's no plans on BEAD's part for an evaluation of the economic impact there. If a participant loses eligibility for the waiver and their family members were providing their support, paid support, BEADS does not have a plan to evaluate that economic impact. No.
Yeah, Holly, I would just add, I'm going to go back and clarify. Right now, we are not gathering this information in order to implement anything. It's really just a baseline. I think, Kate, no one knows what the future would bring if, and that big if and when we were ever asked for a recommendation, I would think at that time we would consider those things. Would we want to reach out? Should they look at additional information? I would lean to our advocacy partners too. I mean, they also would provide information as to the impact. So to me, Holly, I think you're spot on. That really would be a next level decision. We're not even walking up to the bridge yet, let alone crossing that bridge. So again, not trying to make light of it, but I just really do want to level set. Holly, to the point you made, we just have no idea. We don't know how many families require the disregard of parental income. Is it 80%? Is it 10%? Is it 50%? We don't know. So it's really just kind of that initial baseline, and that's why you heard me refer to the majority of our adults, even without the waiver, remain eligible for Medicaid. I don't know the statistics on the under 18 population. I can't tell you that. So we just don't have eyes on it. And it really is more informational, foundational at this point.
Thanks, Kelly. There's also a parking lot question. We have families sharing with us that they were on the wait list for the FSW, notified they were dropped from the wait list and must reapply. They've been on the wait list for 6 years. Is there a process with families on the wait list that being impacted by this reset? So the reset isn't impacting individuals' wait list status. We for a number of years, and I say a number because I don't know the number, it's been a long time, individuals and families have the ability on the FS, it's been this way for years, where they can log in and verify that they're on the wait list and the date that they went on that wait list. They can also update their address or let us know that their address needs to be updated. They can call their local office or any BEADS office and update their address if they move and those sorts of things. So there's nothing related to reset that are pulling people off of wait lists. If a person is not on a wait list or was on a wait list and is no longer, it's possible that we reach out to them and we did not get a response. So those individuals can contact their local office, but any help anyone on this committee can offer in terms of making sure that individuals and families know they need to update their contact information with us when that changes, because if we can't reach them, they're going to miss a mailing, right? When they're invited. So it's super important that they keep us in the loop when they have contact information changes. Jess is moving the slides. I think she's trying to move me on.
No, I wasn't. Sorry. I was trying to
okay.
find that. I can't. Sorry. No, you go ahead. There's another question. I was just trying to find that link and I couldn't find it in my email, so had to go back. Go ahead, Holly.
Oh, okay.
I think there was one more question from Carrie.
Does BEADS receive any information if a child is already on Medicaid as they're receiving a waiver invitation and needing their Medicaid category changed? We provide information to families if they need to work with DFR to get their category changed. We can see in our IT system, because there is, I'm going to say a connection, but I'm going to say a connection. We have some visibility in our system to Medicaid category and Medicaid eligibility. So if our system tells us that there's a need for a category change, our local office will have that conversation with the family.
Holly, I would just say that is a really good question. And Kim
Mhm.
Dotson, I'm looking at you. I remember Secretary Rowe shared at the summit. I think on all of us, it really is important that we ensure that the individuals that we support and the families with youth, that they know the significance of being on the right kind of Medicaid, the right type of Medicaid, so that it doesn't cause problems at a future state during a period of transition. So I don't know, that might be a future point of discussion or conversation we want to put forth just for informational purposes.
Thanks, Kelly. And my time is up. Only went over 3 minutes, which is,
You really didn't, Holly. It's okay.
red letter for me.
We still have
All
10
right.
minutes. I was just getting to it
Yeah,
so I don't
that's
forget
fine.
this.
I do just want to take a minute to thank this group. I gave a lot of information, and I appreciate your patience as we work through it. So just want to thank you for that. Okay, Jess, back to you.
Okay, I'm gonna try to do something real quick. I'm gonna see if this works. Next meeting though, I was on the slide a minute ago. We'll be in September, so just a month, because we were a little off schedule. But in conference room B, it will be in person here at the Government Center. That is a Wednesday, September 16th. BCDS, Christina Commons will be in person to give us a BCDS update. So mark your calendars. I'm gonna see, I shared sound, so I'm hoping Kelly, do you want to speak about this video? You had shared it, I've seen it, but I was curious if you wanted, Kelly Mitchell, we were thinking through what kind of what video to share, and Eddie's yellow folder is pretty popular, so she suggested that, and I thought that's a good idea.
I actually need to give credit to ARC, Kim, and your predecessor, John Dickerson. This is actually one of my faves. I've used it, oh my, multiple times, but I think today as we discuss about where we're at today and the future state of home and community-based services and really reimagining how to better support people with disabilities in their homes and communities, I felt this was important. I'm going to let it speak for itself, but I think we've touched on this so much today that it just seemed to wrap it up, that we all are much more than our weaknesses, if you will.
Great. Thanks, Kelly. And maybe we should start ending with the video. I don't know, maybe that's better than starting, but I don't know. But okay, I will go ahead and hit play real quick, and hopefully you guys can hear. Someone give me a thumbs up or something. If not, I'm going to try to play it from the slide.
Eddie wondered why everyone had a file about him except him. No one would even let him look at his file. So I gave him a yellow folder, told him to take it with him to his next meeting and make notes in it. Eddie said I can't write. I told him it didn't matter. Just make some scribbles in there, and when people asked to see what he was writing, tell them it was personal. Staff called me complaining. Eddie's making notes about us and he won't share them with us. It got them thinking. It also got them to show Eddie his file. He found it was filled with all the things bad he had done. He asked the staff, have I not done anything good? We suggested they add a yellow folder to Eddie's file. And in this folder went all the good things he is doing. Even Eddie got to add to that folder. Then meetings changed. A simple yellow folder made a difference.
There you go. Thank you. It's pretty simple, but I think it makes pretty impactful. So thanks, Kelly, for suggesting that one to share. Okay, I think we're done a little bit early here, so I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts or anything. Thanks to Holly. Sorry you didn't get a break, Holly. You might be done. You might be not okay. So
He's probably ready for a big chug of water. That was a lot.
Get some water or something, but no, we appreciate it. And thanks everyone for the reschedule. And this is recorded, as you know, and we will be placed on our YouTube channel. It takes a day or so, as I have to stop this and send it over to our comms team. But if you have any questions or anything, you know how to get a hold of us. And have a good rest of your summer. And hopefully everyone's staying safe. Lexi, hopefully you're doing okay up north. So take care. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
everybody.